Good morning, great morning, wonderful morning, spectacular morning, outstanding morning, magnificent morning. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious morning. Yes, the beautiful reminder of choice that you have, that I have, that we all have. We always have a choice. Say that. I always have a choice. And the question with regards to the choice is, will you choose? And that right there is so important for you to get because your agency, because that's what it's called, your ability to choose, to accept, reject ideas, is your greatest power. And it's what will help you to live the life that you would love to live. Now, think about that too, as well. You want to change your results, you want to change your outcomes. In other words, how much you earn, what you do for work, your lifestyle, how you feel most of the time. Guess where it starts? It starts in thought. You have to enter the kingdom of heaven and then choose your thoughts wisely. You've got to guard your thoughts from thoughts that aren't in harmony with how you love things to be. And when you do that, what opens up is everything that's in harmony with that. Let's type that in the comments. Like attracts like. See, that's sowing and reaping, that's cause and effect. Everything we do here at Elevitality is about helping you to understand the laws. It's about helping you to understand the power that you have inside of you so that you can live your life on your terms. It's so fun when I think in terms of what's being shared out there about manifestation. Maybe you've studied manifestation or heard of manifestation. Maybe you studied the law of attraction. Well, first of all, if you have been studying the law of attraction, stop studying it. You don't need to. Why? Because it always happens. It happens automatically. With that being said, if you really want to know about manifestation, it's nothing more than thought externalization. That's what it is. Manifestation is thought externalization. And those who are unable to manifest what they would love for their life, in other words, externalize, make a result, it's because they're not thinking. It's because they're operating from the patterns in them, which is leading to more of the same results. And that's something that's got to change. So many people are seeking those changes. I know that you are. That's why you're here. Well, using what we're talking about here will help you to deliver that 100%. And what we've been going over, by the way, is this. We've been going over there is no such thing as self sabotage, and there is no such thing as self sabotage. It's a freaking lie. You are not your own worst enemy. You are not battling against yourself. You don't have to get out of your own way. All of that is a bunch of psychobabble BS. It's not true. Anybody who tells you that, don't listen. Don't listen to it at all because they don't understand who they are and they don't understand what's in the way. And in terms of what's in the way, remember, it's not you, it's the program in you. And that's what this book reveals. This book is what we wish that we were presented with when we first started on this journey in personal development, when we first started learning from the amazing Bob Proctor. Both Dolly and I were coached and mentored by Bob, and we learned from him and we used what he shared with us, which is why we are delivering the results that we're delivering right now. And again, there's where the golden rule comes into play. Application. You've got to use it. If you don't use it, you're not going to be having any movement of the new information inside, which means it's not going to be delivered as a habit, which means your beliefs will not shift, which means your results will not shift. And that's not what you want, is it? No, it's not. All right. So we're going to rid our minds of that as well. So for those of you who are new in here, welcome to this study group. You have access to these live recordings if you're here for the duration of what you've been given access to. And then also you have access to the replays, which are very valuable. These replays are incredible. They're wonderful to reflect on. But again, it still goes back to application. Now, before we go into where we are and where we left off, one thing that you've got to know is the next book that we're going to be diving into, and it's The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. That's an incredible book, especially if you want to attract riches into your life. See, remember, it's tied into like attracts like. If you want to earn more and have money flow to you in increasing quantities from multiple sources, then you've got to be in harmony with that. Well, with that book, The Science of Getting Rich, it's beautiful how Wallace Wattles shares that there is literally a science. And by the way, with regards to this science of getting rich, it applies to everything. He's actually sharing a principle or principles that are tied to drawing things into your life, not chasing them. There's a statement that I share frequently from the fourth chapter in that book. And it's so amazing. It's so incredible. And it ties into understanding how, first of all, you've got to, think in a certain way. And he dives into that later. But he points out how there is nothing that shrinks the minds of more men and women than that of sustained and consecutive thought. It's the hardest work in the world, especially when truth, in other words, how you would love your life to be, is contrary to the appearance, is contrary to what you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. It's contrary to the precedent. It's contrary to what's logical to you, of which that's another gem. What's logical to you is the enemy of your progress. But going back to that point, there is nothing harder that you will do than to think of how you would love things to be. In other words, imagine how you would love things to be and hold that on the screen of your mind when the result is not in harmony with that. With that, when you do that, what do you have? You have power. You can get what you want. You can claim the dominion that you've been given over this earth. And that's why we're going to be diving into it. Now, in terms of the edition that we are going to be studying, there's going to be a link in the chat below, that, or wherever the chat is on your phone or device, where it'll send you directly to Amazon, where you can get the exact copy, the unabridged edition that we are going to be studying from. So order that right away. Number one, because you're worth it. Number two, because it's the right information. All right, so let's go into this. Let's go into where we are in There Is No Such Thing as Self-Sabotage. And what's interesting here is we've come to this chapter 17, where the real work begins. And when does it begin? It's now. It's always now. It's never any other time but now. If you think in terms of now, now is all you've got. How you think now determines the direction that you go in your life. And that's another important truth to grab onto, especially when it comes to what you place in your mind in this now. And most people, unfortunately, aren't placing the right things into their mind. And what's happening is their patterns and beliefs are bringing forth the images of the past and all that stuff. And unfortunately, what that does is it delivers more of the same. Things don't change. Remember, things are not brought into existence by thinking of their opposites or thinking from what's not in harmony with how you'd love things to be. And that simple example can be, I should say, not that simple example. That can be illustrated by a simple example that I share with you frequently, and that is, will you be able to be happy most of the time if your mind is saturated with sadness and disappointment? And what's the answer? The answer is no. It doesn't work that way. In order for you to feel happiness, to be happy, you must be emotionally involved with happy ideas. See, it's very simple. And it's the same way for everything in your life. If you want to attract riches into your life, your mind's got to be completely filled with thoughts that are in harmony with that abundance, that prosperity. You're not going to be able to get there if what's in your mind is all about, I can't afford it. It costs too much. It's too expensive. See, it doesn't work. That's what you're going to attract into your life if that's what's rooted in you, which is why this specific chapter is so important when it comes to you making changes in your life. If you think in terms of all the information that's here, remember, all of it's passive, it's static information. None of it at all will have any power in your life unless you use it. See, this is where you must do the work. And you hear that frequently at the end of every single call. What do I say? What's the golden rule? Application. See, it's application. We place that in the first lesson of our incredible transformation program called Emergence. the golden rule, the power of application. See, it's through use that you deliver the change. Now, before we dive into this final chapter, I want to go and recap what it is we went through and what you're going to be moving in your mind when it comes to all of this information. Now, we did talk about the introduction about how the self-help industry is annulling past a lie, one that keeps people stuck instead of setting them free. And what is that lie? The lie that you are in your own way, that you're your own worst enemy, that you're battling against yourself, all of which is a bunch of bullshit. There is no such thing as self-sabotage. No one intentionally invites negativity into your life. And the next thing we talked about is, who are you? And that right there is a wonderful question to ask that most people don't ask. And when they do ask or are asked that question, they answer with the most common answers of, I'm my race, my skin color, I'm the mother of, the father of, and all that. Yes, while those things are important, that's not the essence of who you are. See, what that is, or what those are the ideas or concepts that you've agreed to. And then we dove in further into the essence of spirit and understanding that within you is dissatisfaction, which is in spirit, which is rooted in your spiritual DNA. It's matter of fact, it's a part of you. And you also have this agency, and how you're not a body with a spirit, but you're a spirit with a body. And then we dove next into the tools of your mind. You have these magnificent tools. And what are those tools? Well, they're your imagination, perception, reason, will, memory, and intuition. All of those tools are there. You have them. You have them the same way that I do. And then we dove further into these higher mental faculties, starting with imagination, which is the starting point of all creation. Remember, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. All things were made by imagination, and without imagination was not anything made that was made. It all starts in the mind, in the form of an image. In the beginning was the word. See, and you have an imagination, and you get to use yours however you want to use it. And in terms of your imagination, you're either a slave to your imaginings or a master of your imagination. And then after that, we dove into perception, which is your point of view. Now, this beautiful chapter dove into the importance of understanding that you're the one that determines what things mean, that your reality has nothing to do with the facts, that it has to do with the meanings that you give those facts. And those meanings can be changed, which means your reality can change. And then we dove further into what's called reason, which is thinking, your ability to think. No one can force you to think the thoughts you think. Remember, you get to accept, reject ideas, and you get to move information around the way that you want to move it around. But unfortunately, see, most people don't think. They're operating with mental activity. And some people will say, what do you mean? I do think, I do think. And then you listen to their words, and it's rooted in negativity and lack, limitation, doubt, worry. No, that's not thinking. That's a pattern of negativity. And then after that, we dove into the will, and that's your ability to focus. Remember Bob Proctor saying that to me. I shared with him my story and where I was and the change that I wanted in my life. And then he looked at me and he said, Troy, he looked at me and he said, Troy, if you want that, you've got to focus. And then he said, there's no other way but through the will. In other words, you've got to hold the image of how you would love things to be on the screen of your mind. And so we dove deep into the will. And then after that, we dove into memory and how you can use memory in a way that serves you, and how when you imagine great things for your life, which are not there materially, how you create new memory cells, new cells of recognition, which help it to be normal inside of you. And then we dove even further into the last but not least of these higher mental faculties, which is intuition. Now, intuition is the only higher mental faculty that travels between the conscious and subconscious mind. Now, this here, remember, is the greatest idea that I've ever come across. to help me to organize my thinking. But with that being said, just briefly, this is the mind, and this big part here is attached to the body. You get the conscious, subconscious, and this here is the thinking mind, the emotional mind. With that being said, these higher mental faculties, they live here. And why I'm bringing this up is because your intuition is the only one that travels between the two. And your intuition enables you to see the answers based on how you're feeling. And then we went even further, and we tied directly to who you truly are. And we pointed out all of these wonderful, beautiful tools that you have. Again, your imagination, your perception, your reason, your will, your memory, your intuition. We explored dissatisfaction in you and your greatest power, which is your ability to choose your thoughts, and tied it into one specific question, and that is, what's their purpose? Remember, everything has a purpose. Type that in the comments. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. And when you look at all of those, what do you see? You see that the purpose for all of them is to create. And if you have all of those higher mental faculties, and if they all have a purpose, and if their purpose is to create, it means that you are a creative being. See, that's the essence of who you are. You're not a body with a spirit, you're a spirit with a body. See, what this leads to is helping you to understand that you've got to go from within out, not from without in. The natural man is an enemy to God, is an enemy to the law. Why? Because the natural man thinks from the senses, thinks from the outside, looks at the outside as everything. It's an enemy to God because it's foolishness to him. Why? Because to look at the effects to determine outcomes is crazy. It's not wise. Why? Because whatever you give attention to, you get more of multiplied. See, that is why this specific chapter is so important. And then we went even further into your mind and your body and understanding the relation between the two. Remember, your body is an instrument of the mind. Your body moves. In other words, the behavior that happens, it automatically happens solely based from how you feel, which comes from the narrative in your mind. You control the narrative in your mind, you control the behavior in your life. You see, that's where most people don't get it, which is why we wrote this, to help people to get it and to understand it. And then we went even further into the two minds. And what are those two minds again? Okay, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Helping you to understand that the conscious and subconscious mind have specific roles, and that this is the master, or it's the director, and that the subconscious mind is the worker. And that in terms of the subconscious part of your mind, that's where the overwhelming majority of the work happens. And one of the illustrations that we dove into was, imagine the conscious mind being first gear in a car and the subconscious mind being all the rest of the gears in the car. Now imagine trying to drive 80 miles an hour in your car in first gear. What would happen to your car? What would happen to the engine? It would fry. You'd burn out. Now, how many of you have burned out trying to do that, right? All of you should be raising your hand. It doesn't work. See, when you understand these two minds and how they work for you and how they work according to law, then things shift. The results shift. And then we went even further into the invisible force. And remember, it's not you that's stopping you. You are a magnificent creative being. You would never intentionally invite negativity into your life. With that being said, there is an invisible force that's there, that is in the way. And what that is what's called your paradigm, your conditioning, which consists of your beliefs and your habits, of which they can be changed. Now, let's think about that one for a moment. Why? Because your beliefs and habits are not you. And most people think that their beliefs and habits are them. It's not true. And again, the illustration about this is that they can be changed. You can change your beliefs. You can change your habits. So that means they're not you. They're what you've agreed to. And then we went even further into breaking down those beliefs and how every single one of us proceeds to act upon our belief, regardless of whether or not it's the truth, and how it's your
How are we
belief
still
that
alive?
determines what's done unto you. Ask believing you shall receive. See, it's belief. It is done unto you as you believe. When you understand that, when you understand where your beliefs came from and how to change them, boom, your beliefs change and then your results change. And then we went even further into habits. Now, remember what habits are. Habits are God's gift to you to make your life easy. Easy. Think about that. Think about habits are incredible. They're amazing. People form habits, habits form futures. And when you think of habits, the habits you have, remember, they determine the overwhelming majority of the behavior that happens in your life. And when I'm talking about habits, I'm talking about mental movement. And again, with those habits, though, always remember they're not a fixed condition of things. What's been planted there in the garden of your mind, which are your beliefs and your habits, they can be changed. See, the issue is not about whether or not habits are great for us. The issue is that we have habits that are not in harmony with how we would love things to be. And see, that's what we dive into with everything that we do here at Emergence. We give you the right information, and then from there, we help you to implement it. And the way that we do that is through repetition and through guidance, and also because of the belief that we have in this ourselves. And then we went even further into the power divide. And what is that power divide? The power divide of understanding what we just talked about in terms of the roles of your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, and how it's important for you to understand and respect those roles so that you can deliver these changes in your life. Which then leads us to the closing chapter, which we're going to go over in detail right now. And this is where the real work begins. Now, before we proceed, for those of you who are watching this live stream and love what you heard and you tapped in this and would love to watch the rest of this call and to watch the replays, then go to Elevitality and register for Master Your Mind. You'll thank yourself later.